Is it possible to replace all of these tools with something that'll fit in your pocket? Stay tuned to find out. Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So I have a vision, nay, a dream of being able to make something that solves a bunch of the common problems that I always have whenever I'm doing leather crafting, but also make it in a way that I can travel with. I end up on the road quite a bit, and having something with me that replaces a lot of the bulkier tools, I think would be really cool. So that's what we're doing today. I'm gonna bring you on this journey while I workshop this little multi-tool that I'm making here. All the steps from prototyping it to actually testing it out and seeing how it works. Stick around to the end because I think you're gonna be real excited with all the stuff this thing does. Now before we start, if you happen to like at any point what you're seeing here today, why don't you give me some of that like and love, and don't forget to subscribe. It's free for you and it really helps the channel grow. All right, let's get into this thing. Okay, so when we're doing any kind of leather crafting, it usually falls within a couple of buckets. We're either constructing a thing, like actually putting a thing together, or we are tooling the thing, where we're actually making designs into it. But in order to represent kind of all the different things I usually end up doing in leathercraft projects and figuring out which things I can replace with this tool, I just laid out a representation of the things it takes to make stuff here and seeing what we can and can get away with. First things first, an easy one to cross out is like a mallet. There's no way I'm gonna be able to cram a bunch of stuff in here and have something that is portable and has enough mass like a mallet would. Same with something like hole punches in general. Mostly because you either need the leverage to be able to close in on something or to be able to, again, hammer something. But I think something like these forked bricking awls here has an element that we can definitely take, right? Now I'm gonna put those aside for now. I think we can do something with those. Same with the burnishing tool. This one's a layup. It's made out of wood. It's not very complex, just has little grooves so you can burnish the edges of your leather. Stamps and swivel knives, stuff like that, are a straight up no. Again, the stamps, you need a bunch of different stamps in order to make designs. You have to be able to hammer it. And then the swivel knife, I'm gonna kind of stay away from things bladed on this because I do want it to be something I can just stick in my pocket. And though I am staying away from cutters in general, this punch brings up an interesting trouble I usually have, and that's just kind of making corner radiuses. If you go back to my earlier stuff, you're gonna see a bunch of times where I'm just busting out a roll of masking tape to use as my little corner radius, or anything that has the right kind of the shape that I want. So I would like this thing to be able to get me some sort of radius. But yeah, being able to incorporate some sort of a knife, a sharp edge to it, would be really, really cool. It's a later problem. I think I know how to do it, but it's a later thing. Same with the sewing needle and thread. Technically, anything that can just be wrapped around a thing, sure, we can just bring it along if we want to, but I think in order to use some of the tools on it, you'd have to then take it all back off, which could be a pain. Then finally, another layup is just a straight edge with some measuring on it, right? Some way to figure out how much distance you've covered and to make some nice straight cuts. So yeah, that brings us down to some basic applications, as well as a couple of maybes that we're gonna be able to hit. Now this, of course, isn't everything. This is just kind of representative of the kind of tools that I'd like to have in there, and I'd like to pepper in a few other things that I constantly have trouble with. All right, so to get started actually prototyping this thing, I'm using this chipboard here, just because it's light and easy to cut and play with. And then for sizing, I'm using this little credit card blank I have. By keeping it roughly that size, I know it's something that can easily fit in your pocket and isn't gonna be hard to bring with me on events or anything. So the most basic canvas here we have to work with are gonna be those edges and those corners. And the corners are gonna be one of the easier ways to duplicate this round punch here by just giving us those corner radiuses, right? So I'll just mark these with 3 different radiuses and leave one of them a nice sharp corner that we can use as a square to square off pieces of material. Coming off of that square is the perfect place to actually put what'll end up being our ruler. Now initially I was thinking that we could have that ruler there and maybe on the back or something, add in some text that says this many, millimeters towards this many ounces of leather or whatever, so you could have a way to gauge it. But I thought that was rather cumbersome, and I kind of want to leave enough space. I don't like having a lot of text on these things, because as you play with them and you use them, all that text starts to wear away over time and it stops being as useful. But then I was inspired by this little gauge that I have from Tandy that really elegantly kind of solves this by giving you this wedge with the demarcations to tell you what ounce leather you actually have. I love that. I like the way that looks. I think it'd be a cool feature that we can do stuff with. So I'm adding that one into it. Though probably not as big, I seldom ever go above 10 ounces. I think this little gauge goes all the way to 14. So I'm just gonna start at 10 ounces and go up to 1. And then as one more easy piece, just kind of around that edge, I put these little half moon shapes to represent where we want our slickers to go. or our edge burnishers. I always learned it as slickers, but I think it's actually called an edge burnisher. All right, so at this point, we have a way to gauge the thickness of leather. We have some measurements, we have some corner radius, we have a way to burnish those edges, right? So it's already rounding out to be a pretty useful little thing, if I get it all to work, that is. But we had mentioned those pricking forks there. And though there probably won't be anything on this, like by the design, that'll be able to actually punch our holes or whatever, it doesn't mean we can't actually mark out our holes for punching. Which really, when you think of it, that's what these little pricking forks do. They're uniformly spaced so that all your threads are gonna look like uniform. It's gonna look nice. So in order to use like the spirit of what this thing is, I figured we can just make a straight line and then follow that line with our pricking fork here. That's gonna give us the exact little indentation spaces that we need. And then we can use that as a guide for like our awl to actually make our marks. Okay, with that, we still have a lot of this empty space in the middle here to work with, but I'm really eager to actually start like having a wooden thing to play with and really figure it out that way. So I just busted out this 1/8" scrap plywood that I had laying around, mostly because it's easy for me to cut with just a knife. And then got to marking it up, first using a ruler to mark out where all the little ticks would go, and then using my half-round punches as a guide to actually draw out those corners so that I knew they'd be roughly in the right shape. It's actually when I was cutting these out that I came up with a bit of a fun idea. You see these little lines that I have at the bottom here? They're at 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch. Which just so happens to be some of the most common seam allowances whenever you're sewing leather. Like if you're doing a turn shoe or something, you'd use the 1/4 inch. Or whereas if you're doing a wallet, something that doesn't need as much strength there, or isn't gonna have as much force put behind it, you'd use that 1/8 inch. To use them, you just kind of line up your lines on the side and draw your mark. Super easy. But I realized that that actually runs into the same spot that my little pricking fork was gonna go to, which is perfect because now I have a nice straight line to run that across. So now we're gonna just double up what that line's gonna be used for. It isn't just gonna mark out my pricking fork, it's gonna also tell us where like a nice seam allowance would be. Now for actually laying in where the pricking fork's gonna go, I started with one of the legs just hanging off the end. This way, when you want to extend your line, because it is quite short, right? So if you want to extend your line and just go through, all you have to do is line up your last mark with the very edge, and we know that's where one of those tines would fall anyways. So now you're gonna maintain that spacing no matter how far down you move. After I marked that out, I just used a drill to punch out all those holes so I can test it. Now to test this out, I started by just drawing my little corner radius, because why not? While I'm testing things, I might as well test that. And then while it's lined up, I just used my awl to mark out all of my holes. And bam, check that out. They're all evenly spaced, 1/8 inch away from the edge. And because I know where that next tine would fall, it's easy to just kind of line it up and follow my curve one at a time until I'm done and it is this perfect, nice, even curve. I am absolutely pleased that that actually works. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this is me fly by the seat of my pants being like, it'd be real nice if I had something that did this. But check it out, it does it. That's really cool. I think it's cool. In fact, I liked it so much that I wanted to add in a second one. You'll see this one, the tongs are a little bit closer together. This is just gonna give it a much finer look, like the other one I was using, that black one. It's much wider apart. I think this is a full millimeter apart. And it makes for a very, I don't know, I don't wanna say like a clunky look, but a much more bulky look. And if I'm doing something really fine, again, like a wallet or something small, that's gonna look really bulky. But now on my 1/4 inch seam allowance line, I have that to work with. And since the line's there anyways, it just kind of makes sense. All right, cool, so the next part I wanted to lay out was that actual little leather gauge area there. To do that, I just found the center of this piece, and then I just measured that space in the bottom to be exactly 3.96 millimeters, which is how thick 10-ounce leather is. So now I have that starting position. With that, I can just kind of use my ruler to go up to that midpoint that I sectioned off to make this little triangle. So somewhere within that triangle will be all of the measurements from that 10-ounce leather till 1-ounce leather, right? I just gotta figure out where that is, which I can do later. This is just my next mock-up here. Real quick little engineering tip here. Because this comes to a singular point on a wooden grain there, you really don't want that. If any pressure comes to it, that is a really easy place for it to split. So you really kind of want to spread out that force a little bit. So to do that, I just drilled a hole at the very top of that peak there. Now there's a lot more area around the radius of that circle for force to distribute rather than it going directly in the position of that grain. For the burnisher, it was dead easy to just find some drill bits that fit exactly into my little slots here, wrap them in a little bit of sandpaper, and then just use those to actually make my marks. This is one I was really curious to test out because the card is a lot thinner and I wasn't sure I would be able to get the same type of results on something that thin. So I just went ahead and beveled the edge of some scrap leather I had here, wet it down to make it pliable and ready, and then went to town on it with my burnisher. And honestly, it worked. It laid everything down. I do think it's a little bit thin. I think in the final one, I have to make it a bit thicker, just because it did scrape a little bit. I don't want that. But after adding a little bit of wax to the edge like I would normally, and then burnishing it again, it came out great. It has a nice little shine. I think I could get away with a thinner card. I still think I want it to be a little thicker though. I want to go beefy tool. Because everybody loves a good beefy tool, am I right? Sorry. Sometimes the bad thoughts win. Now, I'm cutting out a whole lot of sections where I just sit in front of this thing like this. I'm like, what do I usually struggle to do? Or what would be good to have here? And one of those things are just nice clean arches. I know we have the corners for like, you know, making corner arcs or whatever, but actually making circles or making arches at various sizes, that can be a pain if I don't have my compass specifically with me. And again, I usually resort to finding tape or something and going around that. So I figured since we have this little thing, it'd be easy to just kind of measure out some standard sizes that I usually go for and then drill those in. Basically, I went from that top hole that I made in the very peak of that leather gauge there. I went from the center of that hole and then I went 10 millimeters up, 15 millimeters up, and then 25 millimeters up. This way, when I put an awl in that hole, and then I put a pencil in one of those other ones, I'm able to make perfect circles. I can make perfect 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter, and 50 millimeter circles. And yeah, I did everything on this in metric because leathercrafting is weird. They like to mix in imperial every once in a while, but most things are in metric. So I just find it tends to be easier to work in that same system, and honestly, like, metric's just better. I know, American audience, I'm with you. I've been using Imperial my whole life. It's really hard to make the shift, but like, man, a base 10 system is just, it's way more precise. It's just very, very easy to use, so yeah. It's just harder when your brain's been using one form of measurement like Imperial to just kind of, you know, gut check what it's gonna be. Like I can tell you like, yeah, that's about 10 inches. I wouldn't be able to do that yet with metric system. I wouldn't be able to be like, yeah, I know exactly this many centimeters. It's not me. But okay, at this point, I think I've proven enough of the more tricky things that they will work, that I was comfortable actually making this stuff digitally for cutting. By throwing in an Illustrator, I'm able to get actual like perfect measurements on all of those little corner radiuses. I use boxes set at the exact millimeter measurements for that, you know, the ounce of leather, so I knew those would be perfect too. And generally just kind of laid out this entire thing. But there's an interesting thing that happened. Because I'm able to lay it all out mathematically perfectly, I was able to see things that I wasn't able to see in real life. I'll show you once we've got it cut. It's really, really cool. But happy with that, I just sent it over to Ye Olde laser cutter to make it into a real thing. And after cleaning it up and sealing off the edges so that they're not gonna like blacken up my material, look at it. Look at how beautiful it is. This thing is so cool. Let me walk you through all the crap that the tool we made did. And I wanna start with the thing that we didn't cover, which is this little gauge right here. This is actually like a little, like a buckle gauge. Here, it'll be easier if I just show you how it works. I started by using my little measurement ticks to find the center of this strap. But, and this is gonna be an aside, but I promise it's a cool aside. I realized a thing while I was doing that. Basically, this corner and this little mark in the middle of that gauge there form a straight line through this hole. What that means is we can actually use that as a faster way to find the center of straps. Basically, all you have to do is you line that corner up with one side of it, and then you line that little center line there on the buckle gauge with the other side of the leather strap. Now, because that hole is in the center of those two, that hole is directly in the middle of your strap. And you just mark that off and bam, you have it. So now to make a center line, I just do that twice, a little offset from each other, and then use my straight edge to just connect those dots. Center line achieved. Which I freaking love. I think that is the coolest thing ever. You don't have to sit there and measure it out. You just kind of put it on, you tilt it, boom. Exact center of your straps. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. Not planned at all. I wish I was smart enough to say that I planned that. It just so happened to work out perfectly. Love that. All right, back to what this little buckle gauge does. Sorry, I was very excited about that, but back to what this does. So basically, if you have a buckle, the way it works is you wrap your leather around it, and then you need a space cut open for that little pawl to catch, right? The little arm in your buckle to catch. It needs to have enough space that it can freely flow, but you don't want to make it so big that it looks stupid and you have a big empty space. I always struggle with this. I kind of fold it in half and I guesstimate and I cut my holes. They're either too tight or they're too big. I've gotten better with it over time at just eyeballing it because I've done it so many friggin' times, but still, It's always been a pain in the butt. But now with this, all I do is I kind of line it up where the bar would go as if it was inside, and I mark how far down that little pawl goes. Then when it's still folded, I just compare that to my little ticks here. As you can see, this one goes down to that 25 mark. Now by centering it along the strap and right where I want that pawl to go, I just make marks on the 25 on both sides, which gives me exactly how long the cutout will need to be to fit that buckle. I just made these marks lightly to show you, but basically we'd be cutting our holes so that the very top of the hole is right in line with those marks that we just made. But yeah, after actually punching those holes, then using my straight edge to connect them together, I have this perfect oblong hole cutout, which when actually put in place is perfect. Look at that. It's exactly how much space you need for this thing to work. It has full motion. It looks nice and tight and clean. I love it. And the little variety of sizes are actually made to fit the different size buckle / leather combinations you have. So for example, the smallest tick here does these tiny little buckles with some thin leather. We've got some really thick leather here with a big old buckle for the next one up, the 32 mark. All these done super quickly, super accurately with just this little tool. I have the biggest one here, by the way. I looked up the common measurements of what you'd actually need, like to make these. The biggest one is for like saddle, buckles or whatever. Massive. I can't imagine ever using that one myself, but it's there if I need it. Now, I'd love to tell you that 20 goes for exactly this size buckle, or 25 goes for this size buckle. Really, it is the combination of the size buckle you have and how thick your leather is, because that's going to take up a lot more space when it wraps around. So you do got to kind of gauge it out with this thing, but you can use the thing to gauge it out, so it works. I love that. I love that it works. That's so cool. I'm very proud of this. I'll have you know. Now, I wanted to test out my little leather gauge here. I know because we did it mathematically perfectly that this is going to fall in the correct spots, but still I wanted to test it out. And I just so happen to have this scrap from Tandy here that has the ounces they've listed right on it. This one goes between 4 and 5 ounces. And you'll see when I slide it in there, that's between 4 and 5 ounces, baby. Closer to the 4 side, but that's where it is. And this piece that I know to be 7 ounces, bam, 7 ounces on the dot. Very excited about that. Continuing to test this out, I square off this piece of strap here using the squared end, and then I round it off using one of my rounded corners here. And look at that, it's beautiful, it's perfect. I then bevel it and use my little slicker here, and look at that. That's without any wax. Look at how shiny perfect that is. So this one you're gonna notice is thicker than the original. I did an 1/8 inch. I actually cut it out of 1/4 inch. It makes all the difference in the world when it comes to the slicking. It is beautiful. I love that. Perfect. Then using my straight edge to give myself a little seam allowance here, I lined it up with my little sewing guide here, used the awl, and bam! Perfect little line of marks for sewing. Ooh, I also figured out a fun little extra for those holes I made for being able to draw circles. Though I do often have to draft circles or nice arcs, like I wanted it to have a little bit more usefulness. But I did figure out that those differences in sizes actually correspond really well to what you'd want on the end of belts. Let me show you what I mean. So here's a little strap with some holes cut in it as if it was a belt. You can use an awl, I'm just using a pin here for ease. I just push it through that center hole there, right in the last hole of that little strap. And then use the second hole in this chain, the one marked for 30 there, to just round off the edge. This spaces out nicely, kind of where I'd want it anyways. And when I use the razor to cut, it's perfect, it's great. The longest one is really good for regular belts that you'd be wearing. The smallest one, great for watches and stuff. So that works out well. And of course, you can use it to draw circles, so that's cool. All right, I promise I'm almost done. There's one more thing that I figured out you could do with this that I fucking love. Again, it solves a problem for me. And that is this. Often I am dyeing something, and then I need a place to put the dauber down. Can't put it on my table because it's gonna stay on my table, so I put it on whatever I'm using to protect the table. But then, as is the nature of the dye, it just kind of bleeds out onto whatever I put it down on, which is a waste of dye, but also it's easy for it to bleed through your material and then, stain the thing underneath it anyways. But using this, bam, little dauber holder. Super easy, actually. It works perfect. Keeps it off the surface, stops it from touching other stuff accidentally. Not only that, but let's say you're either painting your leather or doing edge finishing or whatever. But that little corner lanyard holder there holds the end of a paintbrush perfectly. Same deal. It actually holds it really well. Like, you can jostle it around quite a bit. I feel like an infomercial will be like, have you ever been in this situation? There's stain everywhere. Have we got a solution for you? Seriously, I love this thing. I made it in another color too, a darker color, but I think I prefer the lighter color. It's just really, really nice. And just before I started shooting here, I actually went back in and I added this line here just to really point out like how to use it to find the center of a strap. So yeah, I am very proud of this thing. And actually, it's one of the first things that I feel like so kind of confident in that I think I want to sell it. I think it's a thing I want to sell. It's like a product. So this is what I'm going to do. By the time this is up, I'm actually going to have some made and you'll be able to purchase it in the store. There'll be a link in the description below where you can get it. Not only am I going to make it so that you can buy like a finished one, they're going to be in limited amounts to start with because I got to figure out how to do production, right? But yeah, not only will you be able to purchase some of these as they last, but I will also add in the cut file. So if you have a laser cutter, also if you're a Patreon member, you of course get discounts in the store, so you'll be able to buy these as well. But yeah, let me know what you think of them, right? I guess I'll find out if you decide to buy them or not, but even if you don't, it'd be nice to hear in the comment section what you think of my little creation here. I'm quite proud of it, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's my creation. I hope you liked it. Leave this stuff down the bottom and tell me how you thought of it. I'm just very proud of it. I think it's cool. Right, to that, thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun here today. Again, give me some of that like it, love if you did, and don't forget to subscribe so you know when I release new content. In the meantime, though, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we can't do any of this without them. Massive shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreon members, Froggy, and our newest Grandmaster tier Patreon member, Familiar T. You rockin', it is because of you that we are able to grow here at all. So super appreciate everything you do for us. I will be sending you some of these, so be on the lookout for that. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you check out some of these videos that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps out a lot too. All right, I got a bunch of these to make, so I'm gonna go and do that.